I'd like to call the board back into session, Board of Embalmers and Funeral Directors, August 15th, 2016, out of executive session at 1:26 p.m. 27 on the computer. I stand corrected. I just do that. This time, I'd like to make a motion pursuant to Section 4717.03 of the Ohio Revised Code. I hereby move that the Ohio Board of Embalmers and Funeral Directors appoint Mr. Tim Derrickson as Executive Director effective August 22, 2016. The Executive Director shall serve at the pleasure of the Board, exercise the full statutory authority of the position as authorized by Chapter 4171 of the Ohio Revised Code, as well as the authority and responsibility formally delegated to the Executive Director by the Board.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Thomas Tannip. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll ask Director Griffin to call.
Mr. Dotson.
Yes.
Mr. Chandler.
Yes.
Ms. Pugh.
Yes.
Mr. Wapner.
Yes.
Mr. Tannen.
Yes.
Mr. Reddick.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Very good. It's my pleasure as President of the Ohio Board of Embalmers and Funeral Directors to introduce you to our new Executive Director. His name is Tim Derrickson. He was born and raised on his family's dairy farm in Butler County, and he worked alongside of his family until he was 27, having graduated from high school, Clark State Community College, and Miami University. He also has held professional licenses issued by the SEC, Series 7 and 54, Florida Real Estate and Ohio Group Health and Life. Tim worked 7 years in healthcare administration, managing health and medical plans for public schools, and later founded Colonial Woods Furniture with his wife Kelly. Tim also founded Indian Ridge Golf Course on the family farm and served as its managing member. Staying active in his community, Tim served as trustee of Hanover Township and is involved in numerous community organizations, including the Butler County Township Association, Rotary, and Oxford Bible Fellowship Church. Excuse me. Tim is currently serving in the Ohio House of Representatives as chairman of the Committee and Family Advancement Committee, chairman of the Faith-Based and Community Initiatives Board, and chairman of the Ohio Legislative Prayer Caucus. Tim also serves on the Education Committee as vice chairman and on the Finance and Government Accountability Oversight Committees. Tim's legislative accomplishments range from eliminating state tax on Pell Grants to reducing small business startup costs by 21%. Tim branded Ohio's WIA sites, now known as Ohio Means Jobs, and has been integral in helping Ohio's unemployed and underemployed citizens find and qualify for jobs throughout ohiomeansjobs.com. Tim is married, has 2 children, I believe aged 24 and 21. It's my pleasure to introduce all of you to Mr. Tim Derrickson. Tim?
Thank you, John. It's a pleasure to be serving with this board. Excuse me.
I want you to come up here and join us, please, in this chair.
Oh, sure.
And please, the floor is yours.
Oh, very good. Well, it's official if I'm sitting at this table.
Absolutely.
Well, it's a pleasure to be serving this board. You know, our funeral homes around the state are really just stalwarts in the community and contributors in so many ways. It's an honor to be able to serve in this capacity. And thank you for giving me this privilege.
Thank you. Thank you. Just to be clear, Tim will be beginning his work with us next Monday. I believe someone said the 22nd. So At that time, he will be resigning his chair in the House and joining us. And Mr. Griffin, who I'm going to speak with or about later, is still the executive director until that time.
Check.
Thank you. Okay. Moving along, I think we had an agenda change here. Maybe I asked to be on the agenda. It went away. Okay, here we go. I want to give a brief president's report. In the current standing board policy manual, it states that the president can act for the board if there are matters that need to be taken care of between board meetings, and there is not a compelling need to call an official board meeting. So I am doing that. I have a short report, but I will ask for a motion to ratify some of these things that have been done. The first matter would be covering some meeting requests and obligations that the former executive director had. In that capacity, I've been asked, or we have been asked formally by one of our associations in the state to be a part of some of their programming, OFDA. So in looking at the schedule and knowing that Tim is just coming on board and has not had a lot of time to prepare, I've asked Mr. Wapner to share those responsibilities with me. So with the board's pleasure, we will be covering 18 meetings throughout the state with OFDA in the months of September, October, and November. And he and I will be working. We have the schedule pretty much worked out, but it'll be pretty much geographically so that there's not too much travel for any one person. I'll also be personally covering the apprenticeship seminar on 9/7, September 7th, and also the master's seminar that Ms. Niekamp was to speak at 9/15 or September 15th. Second thing is I have authorized Eric to move forward with the auditor's office in requesting an audit. I just feel it's good practice. I've had some feedback that feels that we need to start with a clean slate on some of these fiscal matters. So I have made that request through the state of Ohio. Third thing that I'll be asking to ratify on that motion would be returning the auto back to the state. I instructed Eric to do so right away because, number one, I could find nothing in the minutes allowing us to have it in the first place. And number two, the guidelines were very, very muddy and, well, I don't know as we should have had it in the first place and the way it was actually obtained. So for that reason, I asked him to return it, get it off of our budget so that we're not paying for it. So for those three items alone, I would ask for a motion to ratify the meetings schedule that I spoke of for requesting an audit and for also returning the pool car.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Tanev, seconded by Mr. Chandler. Is there any discussion? Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Mr. Dodson had a question.
No, I'm sorry.
Call for question.
Oh, okay. All right, call the roll then.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Chandler?
Yes.
Ms. Pugh?
Yes.
Mr. Wapner?
Yes.
Mr. Tanev?
Yes.
Mr. Reddick?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Always get a little nervous okaying things, and I'm all for full disclosure and transparency, so I appreciate that. The only other thing under that that is not needing a motion, but I want to bring it up for the board's consideration, and that is at the last meeting, and we're going to move into the minutes here in just a moment, it was brought up that several policies in the handbook need to be reevaluated. I've had discussions with Mr. Griffin, and I'm actually going to meet with him Wednesday morning to go over these. But since we're bringing on Mr. Derrickson, then I feel that the way I see us handling that so that there's proper board input on all of these, rather than a shotgun type approach, is to take it a couple policies at a time, work through them, and bring them back to this board then for consideration and ratification. So I believe that's the course that we will be taking on that, and so you will notice on the agenda in the future here that that will kind of be a regular agenda item for a couple of months till we get through those policies. That ends my report unless there's any questions. Thank you. Next agenda item is meeting minutes. I trust that everyone on the board had a chance to review the minutes of the regular meeting and the special meeting for July. Okay.
Motion we approve. You want two motions or one?
One's
I need
fine.
to abstain from the second.
Oh, okay.
Second because I wasn't here.
Okay.
So I don't know if you can break it into two motions or,
Sure.
sorry.
I move we approve the minutes of the July 18th, 2016 meeting.
Motion by Mr. Wapner to approve the minutes of July 18th. Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Chandler. Any discussion?
Do I need to abstain from that since I wasn't at that meeting?
Ms. Bachreiter?
It probably makes sense. Unless you watch the video or something.
Okay, so when it comes to that,
Gotcha.
okay, we call roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Chandler?
Yes.
Ms. Pugh?
Abstaining.
Mr. Wapner?
Yes.
Mr. Tanev?
Yes.
Mr. Reddick?
Yes.
Motion carries.
So the minutes of the July 18th meeting are approved.
I move we approve the minutes of the July 26th meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Dodson, that the minutes be approved from the July 26th special meeting. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the roll.
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Chandler? Ms. Pugh?
Yes.
Mr. Wapner?
Yes.
Mr. Tanev?
Yes.
Mr. Reddick?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Motion carries. Thank you. Next agenda item, persons appearing before the board. First one will be an applicant for a reciprocal field director's license. Is Lisa Johnson here? Okay. Wherever you're comfortable, or? You are, let's see.
Madam Chair,
Yes?
if you'd just like to give us a little background history as to where you're coming from, how you got here, is that all right?
Mhm.
I started working in the Ford Funeral Home in 1982. Became licensed as a Kentucky funeral director in 2004. So, and me, I'm working for Cincinnati Funeral Home to get my Ohio license.
Have you had some sort of felony conviction or misdemeanor or something that has appeared on the record?
Maybe some misdemeanors.
How long ago was that?
30 years.
I'm sorry?
Probably about 30 years ago.
30?
Yes.
30 years.
Are you working full-time?
Yes, sir, I am.
Do you ever have any issues with the board in Kentucky?
Yes, sir.
So the issue that did come up on the background check was 30 years ago, and that has been resolved.
Yes.
So you're not under probation or anything like that?
And you, how long did you work in Kentucky as a licensed funeral director?
Got licensed in 2004 to 2012.
And what happened in between the last 4 years? Been all in Ohio, or?
Yes.
So you've been operating in Ohio, you haven't been licensed?
No, I have not been operating as a funeral director, no, I'm just an employee of the funeral home.
Employee of the funeral, right, as an employee.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, Ms.
Yes.
Johnson, did you ever consider getting that expunged?
I have,
Sure.
okay.
Are there other questions for Ms. Johnson?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the application for reciprocal funeral director's license for Ms. Lisa A. Johnson.
It has been moved by Mr. Tanev to approve the application presented. Is there a second?
A second.
Seconded by Mr. Wapner. Is there any further discussion?
I'm guessing everything's in line with the staff. She's
Eric?
Yes.
No other comments? Okay. Would you call a roll?
Mr. Dodson?
Yes.
Mr. Chandler?
yes.
Ms. Pugh?
Yes.
Mr. Wapner?
Yes.
Mr. Tanev?
Yes.
Mr. Reddick?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sure that Ms. Johnson is more than welcome to stay and watch the rest of this board meeting, but if you have better things to do, family, business, relatives, whatever, you're free to leave. Thank you for coming.
Thank you all. Let's stay.
Welcome to Ohio. Okay, next agenda item, 6.02, Henry W. Vinson, applicant for a registration of funeral director only, apprenticeship, and let me get to my right. The applicant submitted an application for a reciprocal funeral director license. The applicant was asked to appear before the board to address any questions the board may have concerning information within a criminal history check. So, Mr. Vinson, do you want to comment on any of those?
If it's okay with the board, I'm Scott Gilligan, I represent Mr. Vincent. We just wanted to address it because there are some serious criminal charges that he was convicted of and served his time, and because of the serious nature of it, we just wanted to address it. I do have some information here that I'd like to hand out.
Please. For the record, he's being represented by an attorney, Scott Gilligan. Thank you.
Just to give you a little background, and it would be in the criminal background check that would have been submitted to the board. But Mr. Vinson was convicted back in 1991 of a federal charge of racketeering, obtaining illegal access to devices, and then in later by the IRS, conspiracy to impede the IRS in a collection action. And that was in 1999 to 2000. He served his time, was released from prison in 2003, and then cleared parole in 2006. So all that took place over 15 years ago, the crimes. He served his time and he's been out of parole for the last 10 years. And I just wanted to call your attention to two of the licensing laws that would come into play here. 47-1705A1, the applicants of at least 18 years old and good moral character. And then the A2, which is the section that does disqualify an applicant if they've been convicted of certain very serious felonies. But as long as they have been out of parole, out of jail for at least 5 years, then those are no longer a disqualifying factor. And then when you look at some of the cases regarding good moral character, because that's really what we're determining here, is whether Henry is of a good moral character now. The Supreme Court has emphasized that what we're supposed to be looking at is present good moral character, not the past. While the past is certainly a factor and the crimes he committed are certainly a factor the board should look at, the emphasis should be on what is his character now. As I said, the absence of good moral character in the past is secondary to the issue of the existence of good moral character in the present. So that's really what we're going to look at. It was actually a pretty interesting case, a Supreme Court case. It was an attorney there who had, or I should say a law student, who had been charged and pled guilty to grand larceny, came out, completed his probation, completed his law school curriculum, applied for the bar, and was denied because he took the fifth when they asked him about his criminal history. And went up to the Supreme Court overturned it and remanded it back, saying while it was improper for him not to give information to the board should focus more on the present and not the past, because a felony does not disqualify you automatically. We want to look at what's happened in the interim. And that's really what we want to focus on here with Henry. Also, just on the back of the first page there, I've referenced two recent Ohio laws that have been passed by the General Assembly, signed by the governor, which kind of shows that Ohio is in track with the kind of a national movement to start to get rid of or eliminate some of the laws we've had in the past that penalize felons and past offenders. The Collateral Sanctions Act and the Ban the Box Act, which was just passed last year, where the law now directs public employers, they can no longer ask about criminal history on job applications. They can look at it later in the interview process, but it's no longer the automatic disqualification that we saw in the past. With that in mind then, let's look at where Henry has come. Since Henry got out of jail back in early 2003, served his probation, he went back to school, got a master's at the University of West Virginia in marketing administration. He has since gone to work for Walker Funeral Home down in Cincinnati, doing all their marketing programs. We actually have a brochure in your pamphlet that shows a brochure that Henry does, kind of shows some of his work that he's done. He's been very instrumental in Walker Funeral Home's success in the community. It's now a very large funeral home in Cincinnati, and he's worked intricately with that. But Henry wants to return to be a funeral director. He was a funeral director back in West Virginia, and he, as I said, he has a college education. He has a master's program or master's degree, but he's looking to apprenticeship with the Walker Funeral Home to return back to the get the funeral director's license. We have some recommendations in the packet that you can see. One from Arlene Lawrence, who is she is the president of the Buckeye Funeral Directors Association. She works at Walker Funeral Home, and she's offered to be the master for Henry. We have a reference there from Mike Ryan from the Mason, Ohio Funeral Home. Shorten and Ryan attesting to Henry's character. With that, I'd be happy to turn it over if the board has any questions about Henry or his past history or what he's done in the interim since he's put all this behind him.
Thank you, Mr. Gilligan. The floor is open to the board. Ask any questions. It's more.
No.
Okay. Mr. Wagner.
You had applied for licenses in West Virginia and were denied. How long ago was that?
In the early 2000s, I made an application. They denied the application. I appealed that to circuit court. It was remanded back to the board, and then I did not go for the hearing. I did not appeal because I had moved to Cincinnati, and there was no reason for me to have a West Virginia funeral director's license.
What would you say to the board that would lead us to believe that you have cleaned up your act and aren't going to revert back to criminal activity?
For the past 10 plus years, I've been a model citizen. I've returned to school. I have my commercial pilot's license. I'm a flight instructor in airplanes and helicopters. At that time, many years ago, I was in a different place. I was in a very dark place in my life. I came from Williamson, West Virginia, My mother had 2 children. My brother died when I was 13 years old. And my mother became involved with medication, so I essentially reared myself. And I just did not make right decisions. But now, after going to school, I want to do nothing but the right thing. That's why I put so much effort into it. I want to be an example to others that they can overcome the past, that it is possible to be a worthwhile human being again, that you don't have to always just be a second-class citizen, a second-rate citizen, that it is possible to have a life again if you put forth the work.
Ms. Bachbrader, I have a legal question. Is it appropriate to ask if any of these crimes in the past had anything to do with funeral service? My question stands.
Yes, sir. One misdemeanor did have to do with funeral service. It involved the state of West Virginia. I did not use a cloth-covered casket, which was what was in the Medicaid guidelines. I used a metal casket instead of cloth-covered. I just thought cloth-covered looked terrible, and I wanted to give the people something better. So,
That was a misdemeanor in West Virginia.
Yeah, there was no jail time in that, it was a probation.
I'm surprised that would be a.
Yeah.
I think Medicaid fraud.
Further questions from the board?
And that, I'll just say, that was back in 1989, I think it was.
1986.
6. Okay, so that was 20, 30.
Mr. Griffin, do you have any comments or questions?
Has all your restitution been paid for, or any fines that were assessed to you been paid?
Everything has been paid.
And what was that total dollar amount?
I believe it was $200,000 for the conspirator Armando Acosta, his income taxes from 1982. I met him in 1999. I paid all of his income taxes from 1982. But I paid that at the time, so all of that was paid. And I had a $10,000 fine, which I paid that at the sentencing as well.
When was your last probation, off probation? What year
I was sentenced to 3 years of supervised release in 2005 after I was released from incarceration. The probation officer ended that supervision 2 years early. She terminated it at 1 year.
2006.
So it's been
2006.
10 years.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And since that time, there's been no other issues with the law?
Absolutely not. Not even a parking ticket, nothing. I'm 56 years old. All I want to do is to help people. I think I have a lot to give. I think I have a lot from my education to give. I think that I can make a difference, especially in the impoverished communities of Cincinnati. I think I set a good example that it is possible to have a normal life after having a past. And I do have a terrible past. And I'm deeply sorry for that. I deeply apologize to you. I'm very sorry that I have to appear before the board like this. It's embarrassing, and I'm very sorry.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
The Arlene Lawrence that wrote the letter in here, she works at Walker and has agreed to be your master, is that what I understand? Does she work there?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
I'm sorry, just clarification.
Go
David
ahead.
said he applied for reciprocal licensing at the
Um,
beginning. Are
was
you
that
looking
wrong?
for reciprocal or registering as an apprentice?
So
I think it's registering as an apprentice.
It is.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
it says reciprocal funeral director license. I'm sorry, am I the wrong one?
Yeah, click one more down.
Sorry. Yes. The applicant submitted an application for registration for funeral director only apprenticeship.
Okay.
I apologize. Any further discussion or question from the board?
He meets all the other standards here.
I would have to ask Ms. Clark.
Yes,
He meets all the other licensing standards.
these are the licenses that you sir.
And you're applying for a dual license?
No,
No.
sir.
Dual or just funeral director?
Funeral director only.
Funeral director only. Yeah, funeral director only.
What is the pleasure of the board?
I'll make a motion that we give Mr. Vincent a second chance and approve apprenticeship.
It has been moved by Mr. Wapner to give Mr. Vincent a second chance and approve his registration for funeral director only apprenticeship. Is there a second?
I will.
Seconded by Mrs. Pugh. Is there any further discussion from the board? Hearing none then, I'll ask Mr. Griffin to call the roll.
Mr. Dotson?
Yes.
Mr. Chandler?
Yes.
Ms. Pugh?
Yes.
Mr. Wapner?
Yes.
Mr. Tana?
No.
Mr. Reddick?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Your request has been granted. I'm sure that you're going to take this very, very seriously, and I'm sure that we're not going to see you again in this regard.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure that you're not going to be a Mountaineer fan anymore, that you will be supporting Ohio State. That was a joke.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
The board, I'd like to point out too, the board will also be, to get fully licensed, we'll have to be approving that license as well, so we will.
We'll be
With
watching.
apprenticeship, we'll be watching.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Gilligan. You're welcome to stay too if you wish. Do you need any CEU hours as an attorney? Why not?
Thank you very much.
Okay. Jared, I just wish you could get these things to stay on. All right, moving on, agenda item number 7, applications recommended for licensure. You have this in front of you, and we will need a motion to approve. Licenses are before you. I believe there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I would just make the question here, there's a Jonathan Pugh, is that no relation? Okay, very good. Just double checking. Everything in order with all of these from staff?
Yes.
Okay.
Motion then?
Moved by Mr. Chandler.
Second.
To grant these licenses. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll call the roll.
Mr. Dotson?
Yes.
Mr. Chandler?
Yes.
Ms. Pugh?
Yes.
Mr. Wapner?
Yes.
Mr. Tana?
Yes.
Mr. Reddick?
Yes.
Motion carries.